Jennifer, thank you for doing this, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Uh, Welcome to this very special episode of the Live Life Wise show, where we discover wisdom, dispel myths, and forge inspiring connections. And aren't we forging an inspiring connection today? I'm Joff Talbot, founder of LifeWise Wellbeing, and this show is all about exploring ways to live with more clarity, power, and purpose. Through engaging discussions, expert insights, and thought provoking topics, we explore the realms of personal growth, metaphysics, well-being, and the unseen forces shaping our lives. So whether you're seeking clarity, empowerment, or simply a new perspective, this is your space to live life wise. Come and join us on this journey to awakened, fulfilling living. Today, we are deep diving into the amazing, most intuitive, yet fairly little understood world of energy healing, quantum touch to be precise, with someone most amiable, experienced, life living energy healer and CEO of Quantum Touch Energy Healing, Jennifer Noel Taylor. This is our second conversation, with our first interview being on LifeWise Radio way back in, it feels like forever, but in 2021. You can find our then interview on the LifeWise Wellbeing website, along with many other amazing interviews with astonishing masters in their respective fields. So Jennifer Noel Taylor is an energy healing practitioner, self-help motivator, author of 2 books, Spiritual and Broke and Love Incorporated. Is there more? We'll get there in a second. And CEO or CMO, Chief Magickal Officer of Quantum Touch Inc. She is dedicated to her life work to helping people discover the healing power of their love, and does an amazing job of it too. Jennifer graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science and a minor in philosophy. Her first job was a software engineer at a big company in San Diego. And like so many people, she felt incredibly trapped and depressed at her job that paid the bills but didn't align with true passion in life. She innately knew that she had a purpose and felt keenly aware that she was not following her true calling in life. To cope with the social isolation and depression she felt at work, she studied bodywork and alternative healing. She attended the International Professional School of Bodywork in Big Sur and the Maui Academy of Healing Arts, Hawaii. While working on people, she started to feel the energy fields emanating from folk. She became fascinated by energy healing and studied various energy healing modalities, including Reiki. She met Richard Gordon, the founder of Quantum Touch, at his lecture in Maui. She fell in love with the vision of quantum touch and received a very clear message from the universe that energy healing was her true calling. Shortly after training in quantum touch, she quit her job, took a leap of faith, and followed her heart. She took over as CEO of Quantum Touch in June 2002. And as CEO of Quantum Touch, she continues to promote optimal wellness by healing people, connecting more deeply to their love. Not only is love the basis of all healing, but it is also the guiding force behind the business itself. Quantum Touch has grown from a regional US company to a multinational corporation. Jennifer Noel Taylor, master of weaving energy healing energies, CEO or CMO of Quantum Touch Energy Healing. Welcome to the Live Life Wise show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that amazing bio and welcome. And I'm happy to be here.
It's fantastic to have you on board. Before, we did our show in 2001 on our live, and that was all audio. So this is our first time to actually see each other, which is really sweet. It's really nice. So once again, thank you for coming on board. Can you explain to folks, what is energy healing? How does it work from what you've gathered throughout all these years?
That's a great question. So, energy healing is actually really simple. I think little children understand it innately. It's basically healing people with love, or helping facilitate healing with love. And love is the basis of everything. And it makes a couple of assumptions. So, assumption number one is that we're primarily spiritual beings having a human experience. Assumption number two is that energy or life force energy is actually real and it's a spiritual energy. It's not a like electric energy or I believe it's a spiritual energy. It's a spiritual consciousness. And from those two assumptions, the third assumption is that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And these are really, really simple assumptions, but you can use this love and your heart energy to help hold a field of energy for someone to do their own healing. And been at this 20 years. It's really amazing what love can do.
Awesome. And just for folk who might not know, I have been a quantum touch energy healing practitioner since 2018, qualified, working with and for clients since then, and seen many an amazing thing happen. And that deep love connection is such a huge part of it. My thing with the love connection is that it's quite a slippery word, a bit like spiritual, where you can't go without these things, but they're quite slippery for a lot of folk. It perfectly explains what is happening there because when you add a loving feeling and intent to the session at the time, the connection there is phenomenal. Is this being sort of like being able to be monitored at all when someone's delivering quantum touch, adding loving intent in order to gauge how that's happening?
So one of the challenges I think that people have with energy healing is you can't prove it really. You can't prove that life force energy exists. You maybe be able to prove the effects of it, but the actual energy, because it's a spiritual energy, so it's not, let's say it's not of this world, so you can't really use scientific methodologies to prove that love exists or that life force energy exists. There's really no way to measure it, and so that's why I love there's a lot of cynics out there who don't really believe it's real because you can't measure it really. um, the best you can do is measure the results. You can measure, maybe reductions in pain or other things, but then a lot of people are saying, well, then that's a placebo effect. So there's always ways around it to discount it scientifically. So it's very slippery, as you say. And then another thing is like love. So love is kind of a different definition. We're not human love or romantic love. We're dealing with, I call like spirit love or the love of God or the love of all that is or whatever you call it. And that's a different type of love, perhaps, than like, let's say the human love between a mother and a child or that type of love. And so maybe texts call it agape love, or it's a different universal love. And I think it's really hard for people to grasp what that is and measure it or believe it. And I that's where it gets slippery, I think.
Yeah, agreed. It's not that we need to actually put nuts and bolts to something, which is a feeling, right? So by the time there is a result from something happening, of which is termed energy healing, it's a bit like saying, well, there are no chakras, there are no meridians in this body, because whenever I slice someone up, said the surgeon, then I don't see any of these things you're talking about. At the same time, we have an energy body, there are many layers to our beingness. So the fuel of life is that love connection, and ramping that up into a delivery to be able to, I guess, well, conduit for someone is a huge thing, and it's something that we've seen work again and again. So I appreciate with the slippery one, and I know it's quite a hard question then to actually answer. There's quite an irony there, but it's a bit like synchronicities and coincidences. Well, everything coincides with each other, and we do have synchronicities, but do we have to have them as like nuts and bolts stuff? No, because you would find that most of life isn't nuts and bolts stuff. So what is happening between two people when we're practicing quantum touch.
There's another assumption that I think is a bit counter to our current culture, is the idea that all healing is self-healing. So in our current culture, if you go to the doctor, for example, and you take a pill or you have surgery, it's this idea that someone else or something else can fix you. And we have the opposite perspective in that you have the ability within to heal yourself. And given more energy, more love, the right nutrition, the emotional process work, there's a lot of techniques you can use for your own self-healing. So the role of another person is to hold space and hold energy and provide frequency for your own healing. So it's the complete opposite of maybe what we've been taught, that the body is the enemy, or that, I have a disease. Actually, you are, and this is hard for people to maybe take, is that you're part of the creation of the disease for the purpose, in my opinion, of growing the soul. Like, we're here in Earth School for our soul to grow. And a lot of stuff that happens to us is for the growth of the soul, and including disease. It's like, what is my soul trying to teach me? And I believe that once you have, figured that out and you get the direction, you no longer really need the disease. So to me, it's a different approach than maybe what we've been taught.
Very different from what we've been taught. Everything we're saying here is about this intuitive love delivery in order to help someone help heal themselves, the body wants to be in a happy place. There are the messages and storylines that we need to maybe bump into in order to guide us in certain ways and directions. I mean, that's how suddenly a job isn't happening now because, well, something happened or something kind of unsavory happens in life, and it, for whatever its reason, becomes understood later on down the line. And then maybe after a while, if it's, say, unsavory kind of relationships that keep happening time after time after time, then after you kind of get the storyline and knowing what to do with that, then after you've answered those questions about why does this keep happening to me, then you're able to move on past that. Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, so let's say you keep manifesting the same thing over and over again, whether it's the same type of relationship or the same health issue is chronic. I believe within that is a lesson that your soul is trying to teach, that your soul is trying to understand, that your soul is trying to grow. And usually we can see patterns. And once we forgive ourselves for creating that pattern, I believe the pattern no longer needs to exist. And this is a mechanism that I don't think it's a bit of a mystery. How does reality get generated? And I believe it's a kind of a co-creation between ourselves and, God or spirit, and it's for the growth of everyone involved and all the souls here. But it's still a bit of a mystery to me. I would say, like, I don't fully understand exactly everything, but I do have experience that when you process and release and then forgive yourself for being a part of this experience, usually the pattern will change. And I've had people call me up and they're having a chronic health issue, and they've tried everything. I don't know if you've had this type of client, you could name the list of modalities as 20 or 30 different things, and it just isn't resolving. And it oftentimes becomes immediate to me that it isn't resolving because they haven't left their abusive relationship, or they haven't done the hard stuff. They're kind of circling around it, trying this and that, but not really facing probably one of the most difficult aspects they need to face. And so a lot of times the disease or whatever's there to help people move in a different direction.
Really nicely put. So yeah, it's because all of this is essentially self-healing. There's so many layers to this where we could kind of go, right? Because with the universe outside of our personal eyeballs, is a reflective universe. So your world is there for you to learn from and pick up on those other storylines that help you then get past stuff. So if you're bumping into similar people all the time, well, there's something happening there. And in that respect, then your world is super useful because it's not little old me and you're not separate from everything. Everything is there for your messaging as such, just whether kind of you can pick up on that and do something with that, which is really exciting. Thank you for that. Now, I get this question a lot. So, what are the main differences between quantum touch energy healing and Reiki?
Good question. So a lot of these healing modalities, Reiki, quantum touch, healing touch, there's tons of them. They all work with life force energy. And the difference between Reiki and quantum touch is just what the approach to it. So Reiki deals with symbols and attunements and other, a history of spiritual pathway. And quantum touch, we're about technique, breathing, and body awareness. And so even though we're using the same life force energy, just the approach is different. And however people resonate, some people really resonate with Reiki and the techniques and the symbols and things like that. And some people resonate with quantum touch, and a lot of people combine multiple modalities. And so really, I believe when I advise people is pick what really resonates with you and move into that modality.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. And it's really interesting you said about combining modalities. I was unaware, sort of in my early stages of my training, that someone was adding quantum touch and its breathing patterns and adding that to their massage work. I saw that many other people were putting quantum touch techniques into other modalities, which I thought was stunning because it means that it's like this broad umbrella. It doesn't stand alone. It's a specific technique, but it is the same life force. Have you got anything to add with that before we move on?
Yeah, in fact, almost everything works with altering life force, right? I mean, even Western medicine, I mean, the frequencies of the medications alter the life force. And so we're always working with life force energy. It's just the love aspect, I believe, is the most powerful way to work with the energy.
And that's a big difference in, say, Western medicine approach. The difference there is phenomenal about even the approach of a doctor or what have you in order to be kind when you're having that meeting with someone, then pays dividends. So yeah, we're talking this loving connection. Have you got a standout healing quantum touch healing story?
I had a client once where he had a sciatica, like the shooting pain down the back into the leg. He had it for quite a while, like years. And so he came over, I did a half an hour session, just laying on hands where it hurt, like just basically in his lower back. And at the end of the session, the pain was gone, which was amazing. And then, of course, he decides he's going to do a long kayak trip on the North Shore of Kauai right afterwards, because I guess he was free of pain and decided to embark on this journey. And the pain came back a little bit. And then he said he just thought about the session, just thought about it, and the pain went away. So basically, I believe that worked because I was able to work with a certain frequency of energy that was the healing frequency. And then the pain went away and he thought again about the frequency. And so he applied that frequency to himself and then it went away. So I was pretty amazed about that you could just think about a session and his pain went away. So that was really fun.
That's amazing. And again, it goes into really interesting realms of frequency. Having had a session or whatever the frequency of, say, a meeting was, or even in meditation, maybe you're visualizing along those lines, you're putting all your energy and efforts and you feel very like live and like high vibration. And then you go about your everyday and that kind of wanes because you've got daily stuff. But then you think of that situation again, you're pulling yourself back up into that vibration. And so you're meeting it. It is how we work and operate. soon as you meet on different frequencies, it's no different to tuning in a radio station. As soon as you're at that frequency, then the channel is clear, and then you're able to deliver the message. In this case, it's healing, helping their body help heal themselves. But I used to think that energy healing was the person has this energy, it may be like an excess that they call upon, and they're able to kind of like deliver. How does that crass example compare to what is actually happening?
Okay, so like as practitioners, we're actually not healing anyone else, you know. So I think the first thing that people tend to go to is, well, I need to heal this person. I need to somehow get better at this so I can heal a person, you know, and I think that's how we've been taught. And you know, that other things can heal you or that someone can fix you and all of that. And I don't really think it works that way anymore. I don't think we're healing other people, although that's, you know, used in, you know, naming convention, right? But we are able to hold a space of love, working with breathing and body awareness and energy. We can hold a space of high love, opening our hearts. And then the client can entrain to a higher space of love, and it can help people release what is not love, because when you're in a space of love and then what is not love, you know, it's more apparent, right? But if you go out and go for a hike and you see like beautiful nature, then you understand maybe something not beautiful, for example. So it gives you a different perspective. I think it's hard to explain, you know, really frequency and vibration and love, but I'm doing the best I can. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. And there's all different ways to frame it, but I really believe when people encounter higher states of love, what is not love starts to fall away. And that's what we're doing as practitioners.
Yes. Yes, I remember working on a young person, and it was only for 5 minutes. We were doing a different kind of coaching session. It was more of a one-to-one coaching session. And mum was in the room as well. And I asked if I could do quantum touch just there, just to see kind of what would happen. She had quite a storyline that wasn't particularly pleasant, but within this session, I was just intrigued. So just 5 minutes, and I asked her, "So how do you feel like after 5 minutes?" And she goes, "Well, no, no, nothing really. It's okay." And I was like, oh, "Okay, no worries." So we carried on our session, and that night, the mum contacted me, message going, "What did you do? Like, she's a different person." I'm thinking, okay, this is something else. And she explained some wonderful opening. She was opening. And then that was really helping alleviate symptoms that she was having. So that I might consider, or you might consider a like a delayed reaction. Do you think there's something happening at the time that people just don't recognize, or does it not happen for all people, or does it work differently for different people? Do you think?
I think it can be different. I think sometimes that delayed type of reaction happens. You know, you do the session, nothing appears to happen right afterwards. And then 3 days later or 2 days later, you know, it's like an amazing healing. Sometimes stuff happens right away. And it actually makes you question reality, because if you say here's reality and then there's magic, then I mean, what is this, right? I mean, maybe they kind of blend together. Maybe reality is more magical than we think, or maybe magic is more real than we think. And you know, there is kind of a supernatural nature to life. And I think there's a tendency to want to separate the two. Like here's God and here's life, and they don't mix. But I think it's actually they're integrated, right? And I think our body's more magical than we could ever imagine. And I think we're just starting to uncover the magical abilities that we have, and um, the amazing power of love. I mean, you can see it with animals right away. Animals are completely open, it seems like. And, you know, if you take a kitten and rescue it and how it blossoms with the love, I mean, we see there's just so many stories. It's just hard to really believe reality isn't magical after a time.
It's strange putting words, logic, intellect into something which is the opposite, more of a beautiful way to go anyway. And you definitely get the job done a whole lot quicker. could you give us a bit of background to Jennifer Taylor and into then what turned you on to energy healing?
Well, interesting you talk about logic. So I have a degree in computer science, which is it's like a degree in logic. Computers are completely based on zeros and ones, on and offs, complete logical processes, right? And I started working in computer science and I realized this is like really boring because you're only dealing with logic and logic inherently has flaws to it. There's limits to artificial intelligence, for example. Artificial intelligence is just complete logic and computability, right? And there's limits to it. If you've ever studied the halting problem and other problems with computer science, you'll notice that there are inherent limitations to logic. And I started to realize that as a software developer, I'm like, well, logic only takes you so far, but there's a whole other universe out there based on things that don't seem to be logical, like love and compassion and people's emotions and all of this. And it's not logical at all, but it's a lot more interesting. I think there's a blending of the two, but honestly, I don't really fully understand how it works because somehow our consciousness impacts this reality in front of us, and science hasn't even explained that very well, right? Like, I mean, we have all types of theories about, well, how does the nature of the quantum world chunk into the real world? We don't really know. There's a lot of mystery there. Even Western medicine. It uses a lot of logic and science, but there's a lot of mysteries to healing that aren't really accounted for, that even doctors will scratch their head and say, we don't really know, or there's no cure for this, or we don't have an answer here. So I think at some point, you can have science and you can have love and they somehow mix, but it's I believe it's a one of the mysteries of the world. Just like, what is God? Can you prove that God exists? Um, I don't think you can, right? There's really no proof for it, but yet we feel the power. We feel God. We feel that there's something else out there. I think most people feel that there's something more than just this apparent physical reality, and that's where energy healing comes into play.
Yeah, sure. It's like it's like we create the issues through the logic. Is we like need to have something to do or something to mend. We must strive our way to become our true selves. When the irony is well, you're that already. You're part of the whole. In fact, you are the whole. You're only, from what I understand, you're looking through the lens of an apparent individual. Well, the thing is that we're supposed to be different because to be part of the whole, in order to be off and explore and gather experiences, well, that has to be experienced through different apparent peoples or different experiences or different lenses in order to feed back to source. And which is why it's so interesting to think that you have to fix and mend stuff. I've got to be here. I'm supposed to be doing this. And then, but every time I do that, it falls apart and fails. Isn't it funny that when things fall apart is when the magic starts to happen? You let go of having to control everything. Because as an individual, you get to play with the world and play with it a little bit better than maybe how we've been educated. You start to discover that potentially, well, things like energy healing is a thing and it does work. So, Jennifer, you've had quite the storyline. I mean, you've written two books, Spiritual and Broke and Love Incorporated. So, what happened there? Spiritual and Broke. I mean, it's an intriguing title, right?
Actually, I'm working on another book. A lot of it is, how do we make sense of when bad things happen to good people? How do we really, how do we really frame this, right? How do we use our life experiences to grow rather than just get stuck in kind of anger or resentment or, that happened to me and now my life will never be okay type of thinking, right? How do we actually take, let's say, negative or even horrific experiences and use it for the highest good, use it for our growth. And that's my next topic. I touched a little bit on it in some of my other books, but it's a really important topic because we just see these really horrific experiences in the world. And I think most of us are just like, what? I don't understand. Like, why would a loving God allow this to happen? Or these pertinent questions, and there's, to me, it's a big mystery, but at the same time, how do we move beyond these experiences and find the message in them? And the same with disease, how do we take a disease or a health condition and turn it into hope, into a positive, how do we learn the lesson and move forward without just basking in years of resentment or anger and pain? And that's my next topic, because I'm just exploring this aspect that seems to affect so many people. They've just become stuck in anger and resentment. How do we use these experiences to become a greater space of joy and love and compassion? So that's my next topic.
Do you have some of headway and answers to that question?
Yeah, I've been exploring it for years. I've had my own trauma, and it took me a while to really get out of the victim, first of all, getting out of feeling like I'm a victim and life's unfair, and why did God let this happen? And the questions that a lot of people say are blaming God. So I think the first thing is, how do we really, from a deep level, move beyond feeling like a victim? I think right there, that is really hard. Most people feel like all the political unrest going on right now, a lot of people, I think that's due to the fact that a lot of people feel like they're a victim, either a victim of inflation, of, our current president, or whatever is going on, that victim mentality is such a huge aspect. So that's one step. And then how do you make sense then? If you don't feel like a victim, then what are you? You were part of the creation of the trauma, which is also maybe equally hard to look at. So, what part of me was a co creator in this trauma for my own growth? And that to me is a really interesting question, if you can allow yourselves to move beyond victim. But I think the only way out of these traumas and tragedies is to move beyond that victim and move into, okay, apparently I was a co-creator in this process, and what part of me was a match for this? I think that's really hard, but that's something that I think also with energy healing, what part of you was not in a space of love to allow the disease or co-creation? And it's kind of controversial, because I think that's it may be a challenging way to look at things, but I think it's less challenging than just staying in the victim mentality.
Do you think then that someone having that victim mentality, that healing is not as readily accessible in that mode?
I think, yes, I believe that when people are stuck feeling like a victim, it's hard to also believe that all healing is self-healing, right? Those two beliefs are incompatible. So it's a hard one, but if you have the strength within to say, okay, I'm going to let that victim consciousness no longer run the show, and saying, okay, now I'm going to work on the self-healing process, then it becomes, well, it's not like you're fighting a disease. You're our name, the way that we term things in our society is very much like we're all victims of life, right? I mean, a disease, I'm fighting a disease, right? I mean, that's how we phrase it, right?
Sorry.
And
Oh,
it
dear.
means you're
Yeah.
fighting yourself, but why, right? So then it assumes you're a victim of your own body. Like, I'm a victim of my own body, but this is my body. So I can change my own body. So you have to step away from the victim to be able to change, in my opinion. And so you're no longer fighting a disease, you're trying to understand the lesson contained within. And I think that's a very, very difficult way to grasp life for people when we've been taught that we're just a victim bouncing around and playing defense in life. And I don't think that's why we're here to just, okay, what's the next bad thing that's going to happen? Or, and then blaming God or blaming other people or blaming your doctor even, or blaming whatever you want to blame. It takes you farther away from solving, what within was part of this creation.
Yeah, I think then it goes back to your world being a reflective world, as in if you're sitting there with a friend, you're both looking out the window. Well, you're both looking at the same landscape, but it might mean something. Well, will mean something different to you than it will do to your friend. So our world is our litmus test. Is this where you want to kind of go with the book? Is that then like on the self-empowering and giving that back to the person? Is it different than that?
Yeah, well, first it's, how do we move beyond victims so we don't feel that we're, just a victim to life? And then the second is, how do we actually understand what our soul is trying to teach us so that we can no longer have to attract that situation into our lives? I believe when you really unravel the lesson, you're not attracted anymore. And so the hard part is unraveling the lesson. And it's not intellectual either. It's unraveling it from the heart. So when you understand the lesson, and then you can forgive yourself for creating the situation, which then you no longer need to attract it. It's very different from playing defense and saying, I just have to kind of, when is going to be the next bad experience? When is the shoe going to drop again in my life? When is the next bad experience going to queue up? I'm just saying we can take a more empowered approach and actually own our role as co-creators in our reality. We're not just sitting around waiting for the next major trauma, right? There's a different pathway through it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Absolutely. And it puts you back in the driving seat, right? It's really interesting what you said about it's not like a linear, logical go back and try and fix everything because it's not that kind of journey. You said it was a heart based journey.
So it's not an ego dominance thing where we're trying to, control everything because it's, I want to emphasize we're in a co-creative space with our creator. And so it's based on the guidance of the heart and what's in the heart. So it's a heart-centered journey. It's not an ego-dominated journey. So, because I think that's where we also get into trouble is we say, all right, we're in charge, but we're just trying to control everything. And that seems to fail as well, as you had mentioned. So there's kind of like the leading with the heart and understanding what's going on in your heart that's not love. And how do you move out of that so that you don't have to create these negative patterns in your life?
So when's the book coming out, Jennifer?
Oh, I don't know because I'm still working on it. I just started the idea, so probably probably a while. It's just something I've been playing with recently. Yeah.
Well, it's
So
a lovely idea. Yeah, wish you all the best with it. What is the future hold for quantum touch?
we've evolved it into a 7 level system now because we have, the level 1, which is getting started with energy, kind of what I call energy healing 101. And then we have supercharging or becoming supercharged, which is a expanding on level 1, working with colors. And then one of my favorite workshops that I think I would love to give more emphasis to is becoming whole, which is understanding what is the spiritual nature of the disease? What are the emotions behind it? What I was just been talking about. What was our role in the creation of a disease? And it's a process for understanding that. So it's one of my favorite workshops because it addresses people who may have been trying everything that we've talked about and not really seeing results or not really getting better. Usually at that point, there's something else going on that is a stuck emotion and that workshop helps people discover that. And then we have a level 4, which is becoming heart conscious. It's how do you approach the world? What I was just talking about too. How do you approach the world from an open-hearted space rather than ego dominance? And then we have level 5, which is becoming miraculous, which is how do we work with the law of attraction and opening our heart to create the realities that give us joy and happiness? And then we have a few more very new workshops. We have Becoming More, which is kind of how do we share our gifts with each other? It's an in-person experience. And then finally, Becoming Ageless is how do we slow down, use energy to slow down, or maybe even reverse some of the aging process. And that's our seventh workshop. And that one is really intriguing because we're seeing some really interesting things. Yeah, I believe you can use energy to maybe reverse or slow down the aging process and all the challenges associated with aging. Maybe you can mitigate some of those. And I love that one because I think it's really possible.
I think it's fascinating. So how new is that? And if you got anything else like add on that?
That workshop's really new. Um, we've only taught it once. We've been teaching it live.
In
Um,
Maui, or is that elsewhere,
um,
or Maui
we
based,
we
or
taught it. Yeah, we taught it in Cancun, and then the next one we're going to teach in Portugal.
right? And when does
So
when does the Portugal one happen?
that one's at the end of October. So we're going to start promoting it pretty soon, getting it together on our calendar. But yeah, that one's really interesting. I mean, I think a lot of we're seeing some results, on it. And I think, for example, people's eyesight, right, that tends to go when you're older. And I think even that you can work with the energy and slow that down or even reverse it, for example. I think there's just a lot of things, people may not like wrinkles. So maybe you can work with the energy to maybe, reverse some of the wrinkles or slow that down a little bit. You know, it's just our next kind of frontier.
That's a fascinating one. The typical
Yeah.
Western human, doing everything they can to run away from growing up.
I think that you can enjoy aspects of aging, but also use energy to maybe create better health and make it easier. You may not need to have all the problems associated with aging that we tend to have in our society. It's just something we're exploring. I like to use it on my eyes because, I feel like I can be effective with vision, which is one of my favorite ways to work with it.
So, are you using quantum touch or the energies in order to support this?
Yeah, you can use the energies to basically, I aging could be a result of just all the trauma and all the lack of love and everything on life, right? That we all experience. And I believe when you start to reverse some of those beliefs, you can maybe slow it down or even reverse it. For example, I don't think you necessarily need to have the age-related vision problems. You don't necessarily need to wear reading glasses over a certain age if you work on your eyes. But it's not a perfect world, right? Like maybe you can reverse it a little bit, or maybe you can reverse all of it. I don't really know.
It's amazing. And are these things possible? Like, yes, there's a book which goes into the eyesight one, especially, which is to take off your glasses and see. But I was trying to rack my mind as to who it's from. Yeah, it's very very possible. I'm intrigued, Jennifer. I hope that goes great.
You can reverse maybe your more of the superficial things people don't like, but also, your vitality levels and your energy levels, or, if you're having more physical issues, pain or whatever, why not use the energy for that? So
Mm.
um, it's all an experiment, and I don't pretend to have all the answers. I'm just a fellow explorer, and but it's just a really fascinating exploration.
I think that's a
I know I
bold
got
thing.
frustrated
Go
when
on.
I turned when I got into my 50s, right? I got into my 50s and like my vision was starting to kind of, seeing close up was becoming a problem. So I'm like, I don't really want to wear glasses, so I'm just going to start doing the energy work on my eyes. And so that's why I talk about my eyes a lot because it's just one of my things. I don't want to use glasses, you know. So I use it for that.
And do you have tangible results for you? Means you'll continue to
Yeah,
work with it?
I mean, yeah, I'm like 54 and I don't use glasses to read, small print. So I definitely see results. And if I get lazy and stop working on the energy, it gets a little harder to read things close up. But so I use it, to say, oh yeah, it's getting a little harder to read. I'm gonna do some energy work on it, and then it gets easier to read. So it's my own experiment.
Love it. And yeah, you're right. We're about fellow explorers, and we're not supposed to like have all the answers. We're supposed to adventure in life and discover. And I think you do a great job of it. And I know we're reaching the sort of top of our time and such. So what's sort of like the next for Jennifer? Like, so is it then the book? Is there something else in mind? No, you're a busy person. So what's next for Jennifer, would you say?
My intent is to work on that book a little bit and also grow quantum touch and I think the world really needs energy healing right now. I think energy healing is a part of it. So many people are struggling right now, and I think energy healing can be very helpful for people who are, I just see a lot of people who are angry or lost hope or, going into blame, and the economy has been very difficult for people. So I think the energy is really needed, even just to help people lessen their anxiety and cope with some of the challenges right now. I want to leave person with one more thought. I was talking to a friend of mine who said, I like to make money when the market goes up and I like to make money when the market goes down. And it's another reminder that no matter what's going on externally, that you are the creator. You have the power. You have the ability from a heart dominant place to make changes and to lead a joyful life.
It's an empowering journey. I think it's really kind of where we're headed is that to put you in your driver's seat, you don't have to rely on, say, faceless people and messages from others that when it doesn't resonate, when that love connection is the thing that we all have, that we all can be in agreement that helps us. And as we are all of the same thing, then it kind of makes some logical sense that we utilize those energies in order to raise our bar. So, Jennifer, thank you for being on the Live Lifewise show. Wish you all the best in all your adventures. Have you got anything else, sort of last thing for the road?
Yeah, I just really thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be on your show. So great interview. Thank you.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And it's so nice to do this in, well, digital person. Thank you. This has been Geoff Talbot for the Live Life Voice show with Jennifer Noel Taylor, CMO, Chief Magical Officer of Quantum Touch Energy Healing, authoress, and all round wonderful person. Jennifer, thanks again and wish you all the best in all of your adventures.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yay! Okay, well, have a great day out there.
You too. Thank you.